It's Andre from High Performance Academy, and we're here at World Time Attack at Haltech stand with Nathan from Haltech, and I wanted to take some time to chat to Nathan about some of the advanced functions with the Haltech Elite Race Expansion module. Now, we're seeing this race expansion module used primarily in some of the higher horsepower V8 cars where the Elite 2500 on its own isn't enough to function stage injection on a V8 engine, correct?
Correct, yes. So a lot of these cars are using a lot more functionality to get down the track as quick as they can.
Now, aside from the ability to then run stage injection, stage sequential injection and direct fire ignition on a V8, which is essential just to get enough fuel into the engine and then create the spark, really the aspects we want to talk about though today are some of the more advanced functions that are being used really specifically in this drag application, and one of the ones that I'm really excited about is the torque management that you've got here. Now, this is nothing particularly new. There's a lot of the US competitors already are running products such as the MSD grid, and I think a US mentality, even I'd go so far as to say, is adding on additional modules and boxes into these cars to do specific functions, and you're getting rid of all of that with the race expansion module, bringing everything into the one place. And the first aspect we'll talk about is this torque management. So can you give us a little rundown on how the torque management works in the Elite?
Yeah, definitely. So the torque management is monitoring the drive shaft speed of the vehicle. So that has a predetermined curve that's mapped out from all of the engine data that we get and all of the data logging. Then you can go through and map it out, a desired curve, and then what the ECU does is it'll actually monitor that curve, how it's driving along it, and then basically it'll start to pull out ignition timing if it needs to, or even drop cylinders if it needs to, and it's doing that on basically every pulse that's coming through, so it's actively going through and monitoring that signal.
Now, for those who maybe aren't quite understanding exactly what this really means, let's break it down. And really, we want to call it what it actually is. It's traction control, isn't it?
Yeah, basically what it is doing is limiting slip. So slip, once the tyre's already started to slip significantly, the run's over. So what you're trying to do is preempt that by looking at the speed of the vehicle and how that's changing, using derivatives over time, and then basically making some adjustments as quick as possible to get on top of the tyre so it's not going to slip.
So what we've got here, this ability to monitor the drive shaft speed, which in essence the wheel speed obviously is directly related to a drive shaft speed. So then what we're doing based on data presumably from a perfect or exceptionally good pass with no wheel spin, you can use that data on drive shaft speed versus time to give what is the ideal drive shaft speed, and then anytime the drive shaft speed goes above this line during a pass, what this means is that the car is then suffering from wheel spin, then the ECU can start taking preemptive measures to reduce that wheel spin.
Exactly. So you do have that ideal curve that you want to run, and the good thing about drag racing is it's very repetitive, so you know what the car should be doing for that track. You can make some mild adjustments, but pretty much that curve's going to be what you want the car to do.
So in mild cases where we're just starting to see the drive shaft speed creep just above that predetermined line, we can reduce the engine torque and thereby reduce the wheel slip by reducing ignition timing first.
Yes, so these engines are quite large capacity, big powered engines, so obviously a retard is gentler on them and has a significant impact. Dropping cylinders does upset the vehicle quite a lot, so it's usually, if you go on to that point, it's you're way off. So usually it's a retard that's used to bring it back into line and keep that traction right where it needs to be.
And I think it's probably worth also pointing out, particularly with these Pro Mod style car, more often than not, they've got more power than they can put to the track just about at any point. So really one of the big challenges, which might not be obvious from the outset, is getting these cars to go down the track in the best time possible is really a fine balancing act for the tuner in order to match the amount of power the engine's developing to the amount of traction at that particular point on the track. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much going on. So not only are these high-powered cars, but you have such a short time span to react. So from the time when you've launched through to the hitting the traps, there's only 5 seconds that's gone through. A lot of stuff's happening in that time, so you've got to be really, really quickly on it. We're also running a lot of really small tired high horsepower cars, so your X275 cars. So it's even worse for them because the tyre contact surface is so much smaller. So we're having great results with guys running this type of technology and using the Haltech to get them down the track quicker.
Moving on, the other function I wanted to talk about, or another function I wanted to talk about, is your CO2 boost control. So can you give us some insight onto how that works and how we can make use of it?
Yeah, so basically the CO2 control is doing closed loop control on the top hat in the wastegate, as opposed to doing it from the intake manifold. And they're using CO2, so using a known pressure source to monitor and map that boost control. We also do that because we can map it over the drag race itself. So you can, along with the torque management strategies, you can also go through and progressively feed that power in over the run.
So here what we're doing, rather than directly monitoring and controlling boost pressure, the pressure in the wastegate ends up affecting our boost pressure, so it's sort of a cause and effect.
Yep.
The other thing with that as well, and probably not such an issue with these big tyre cars with reasonable traction, and certainly I had this problem with my own four-wheel drive drag car where there's a finite range that we can run from the minimum wastegate spring pressure through to maximum boost pressure. And maybe if we've got a traction limited car where we need to launch with relatively low boost pressure, perhaps 15 or 20 psi, that at the deep end of the track is going to limit how much boost we can get in. So using CO2 maybe regulated to a higher pressure, maybe 80 or 90 psi, that gives us a wider range that we can vary the boost across.
Yeah, you've got a wider range there. You're also trying to regulate a smaller area. You're using that little hat, so basically you can have a little bit finer control, and it then does relate to what the manifold pressure is seeing. So the engine, obviously, once you're launching, and it's so dynamic that a lot can be going on. So trying to control a smaller area is always easier.
Now, another function that you've brought to the Haltech Elite is the ability to control the pressure in shocks. Again, really related purely to drag racing. And again, this is another area where we saw another external control box that was based off a timer to do this. So you can now bring this in-house into the Elite and control it all from the one place.
Yeah, definitely the theory behind the race expansion module and the Elite range in general is to reduce the chance of problems in drag cars. So traditionally those same cars would have, up to 10 boxes controlling all these different functions with different timers and switching this and switching that, and the wiring was a mess. So when something went wrong, where do you start to look? Now you've got one connection to one ECU that has everything in front of you. They're all geared off the same timer. We have a race timer built into it that's triggered off by one single event. So essentially the tuner can actually tune and manage the whole car. And that's from the traction control through the engine management through to the boost control, the shocks, the gear shifts, you name it, is all done through one system. So where there's sort of been this mentality that no, nothing's fast enough to be able to go and handle all those functions at once, the Haltech is. So
let's just talk about that processing speed, because I think this is a sticking point, and I know that a lot of these manufacturers of these add-on boxes use this as a really big drive for their marketing of how quickly these add-on boxes can look at an input, calculate, and then decide what to do. The reality that I think often is lost there is, particularly if we take it back to basics and look at the torque management or traction control, it doesn't really matter how fast we're looking at that drive shaft speed and processing that. What's really important is we can't do anything until the next time the engine fires. So fair to say that's our limiting aspect?
Yeah, well, you're controlling an engine. That's ultimately what you're doing, and you can't affect it until the next cylinder event. So as long as you can handle everything that has to be done before that next event, then you're fine. So where you get into problems if something is running lower, or you're doing too many things that you run out of time and you miss an event or two or an engine cycle, the race is lost. So we're well within those limits and doing more every day. So it's not a problem for the Haltech engine management.
And nitrous as well. I know that you've done a lot of work with the nitrous control strategy with this unit. So can you tell me a little bit about this? Is it 6 stages now?
Yeah, so we do up to 6 stages of nitrous control. So that's basically a dry system control. So there is only a nitrous or nitrous banks of nitrous solenoids. We do all of the additional fueling through the Haltech. That's along with everything else that's happening. So once again, reducing the number of boxes and also improving the control you've got. So we're able to map those. We have multiple multiple configurations the user can change on the fly to vary the amount of nitrous. So for a lot of guys that are doing no prep racing, they can switch on and off various stages. So they may only want to run, say, 2 stages instead of 3 stages of nitrous. We're doing stuff on big nitrous builds where they're banking the nitrous. So we'll actually turn the nitrous on the left bank before the right bank to help introduce the nitrous cleanly. And yeah, just the sheer amount that they're trying to run through these engines. So the nitrous coming on is like your boost. That's their power adder. So the more finer control you have over that, the better the car's going to perform. Once again, with traction being a big limiting factor, you want that to come on as smoothly as you can and get as much as you can into the engine safely. And that's where the Haltech adds that extra tunability. We're doing the engine management completely, including the power adder of nitrous. So all in the one box. We're doing all of the thermocouple monitoring, safeties that are built into there. We're monitoring nitrous pressures. We're monitoring closed loop AFRs while that's happening. So it's all in the one system and makes it so much easier for the tuner.
I mean, yeah, definitely from a tuner's perspective, it makes perfect sense. You've got control of everything in the one module. There's no confusion between modules not talking properly, and it simplifies the whole system. And when reliability is key, obviously that's just so important. If someone wants to find out more about the Elite range and this race expansion module, how can they find out more? Where should they go?
Yeah, you could definitely go to the website to find more information on the Haltech Elite series as well as the race expansion module. If you're building a car of that caliber, we probably suggest that you do give us a call, and then we can go through the pros and cons for all the different setups and we'll help you with what you need.
Perfect. Look, thanks for taking the time to talk us through that product, Nathan.
Yeah, anytime.